Hi, I'm here with Bill Markley, the famous author of Sitting Bull and Geronimo and uh, half a dozen other comparison books. He writes some history. He acts in the movies. In fact, you probably remember him having seen him waving to Kevin Costner in the movie. Yeah, going, come back here, Yank, come back here. Anyway, here's Bill. Bill, what sort of writing do you do? What's your genre?
Well, it's kind of funny. I could almost say you write yourself into a corner. It's Old West nonfiction is pretty much what I do now. I did put one book out that was historical fiction set in Deadwood, but everything else is nonfiction, and it's fun. I enjoy it.
Okay, isn't it hard work writing nonfiction?
Yeah, it is. And as you know, it is because there's not you can't go back and look at something and go, oh yeah, that's the correct story. There could be like two versions or maybe five versions or even more. Case in point, I went to Buffalo, Wyoming to do a story on the Johnson County War there, and I walked into the library and talked to the librarian, and she said, which side are you taking? I said, well, the outlaw side. And she goes, well, there's about 5 different sides. I'm like, okay, thanks. So, history, when they say history belongs to those who write, it's really true because let's say that, and we'll take me, for instance, let's say that there was one person out there that hated me and but everybody else loved me. And that one person wrote about me, but no one else did. Everybody would think I'm a terrible person, and I think that happens in the past. Somebody might not like somebody and they'll write about him that, oh, he's a horrible person, and maybe they weren't so horrible.
If you look at the movie Wyatt Earp, it takes a version of both Wyatt and Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday is based on what Bat Masterson had to say about him, and Bat didn't like him.
That's right. He didn't like him at all. But he did, no pun intended, go to bat for him one time in Colorado to spring him from jail.
Oh yeah.
But it's interesting because even when you go back and you look at newspapers, and if anybody's out there doing research, I mean, newspapers is a great place, and a really good source is newspapers.com. Newspapers.com. Yes. And I think it costs something like $65-70 for 6 months, but it's very valuable because you can plunk in, let's say, Buffalo Bill Cody, June 1870, and it'll pull up the papers where he's referenced in that. So it's a great resource, and you can go back to some original stuff. But even then, newspapers will, fake news is nothing new. I mean, there was printing all kinds of rumors. There were several times that, Buffalo Bill is claimed to be dead, and same with Wild Bill. And they, no, I'm still here.
I'm working on a book on train robbers, and one of them went down into Mexico and was shot by firing squad.
Oh,
and it ran in the newspapers 3 different times. No, he's still alive.
Yeah. So you got to be careful. You got to try to go for, and sometimes you just got to rely on your gut. What sounds really realistic compared to some other things? And again, you might not get it right. I like what one of the biographers of Jesse James said. He said, that pop up on your, yeah, get that out. He said, well, I might not be 100% accurate, but I'm 100% honest. Which means, in other words, you try to do an honest job. You try to find what really is real, and you're probably not going to get it all correct. So that's the sorry part about history. But again, we have to work with what we got, because we can't go back and ask anybody specifically, like, hey, what do you mean by this? Or why did you do that dumb move over there? But anyway.
So tell me, Bill, what makes you unique as a writer? What's special about you?
Um, I want to try to tell the tale in a way that the average person the average reader out there would enjoy. I mean, to make history enjoyable for people. Um, you know, I'm not writing. You can have different audiences. I'm not writing for the university type people because that there are those books are already out there. I mean that they can dive into get the critical details and that sort of thing. I want to get history out there for people that might not have picked up a history book for a while, or how many people have really gone in and read a story about Sitting Bull or Geronimo or Wild Bill Hickock. I mean, we know all their names. We might know a little, people might know, yeah, Wild Bill Hickock, he was shot and killed in Deadwood. But, what was he doing? I mean, and he wasn't a gunslinger the whole time. He was just, he liked to play cards, liked to drink, he liked to, hang out with his friends. And every once in a while, some clown would come along and, pick a fight with him, but he wasn't going to back down. So I want to tell the story. So I want to make it interesting. I want to make history come alive for people. So that's what I want to do. That's what I strive for. Maybe I get there, maybe I don't. But that's the fun part about it.
And it's got to be for the people. We've got to take it to them. I've reviewed a few books recently that were written by academics for at least 3 people in their field that are going to read that book. And everybody else will die of boredom in the first chapter. You remind me of something that happened to me. I gave a talk on Lieutenant Bascom and Cochise and their meeting in 1861. And I had some lady who was angry because I didn't mention Geronimo.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't part of it at that point. He came in later, I mean, he was like just one of the warriors sitting out on the hilltop taking pot shots,
Well, yeah, basically I said it's because he probably wasn't there. And if he was a very minor player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he came in a lot later. And didn't really have a major part in it at all.
Yeah, he comes to prominence after they're up in San Carlos. What's your background, Bill? Where did you grow up? What are the forces that shaped you?
Yeah, that's interesting because the forces that shaped me. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I've lived in South Dakota since 1976, so I'm almost a native. But I grew up I grew up on a small farm, southeastern Pennsylvania. In fact, 3 miles from Valley Forge. When we were kids, we'd go over to Valley Forge and go sledding on the hills over there. And being on a farm, a small farm that has been around since the 1820s, we grew up using antiques and hearing old stories. So history has always been a part of my life. And wherever I go, I went down to Virginia. I went to Virginia Tech, got a BS biology and a master's in environmental engineering down there. So I used to know how to run a wastewater treatment plant if you needed a.
I'll definitely call you if the septic system backs up.
In fact, we had this one lab. This is kind of a funny story. We had this one lab called Sanitary Engineering Lab, and our course instructor said, by the time you get out of this lab, you'll be able to sit on top of a mule that's been dead for 3 days and eat your lunch. So I've seen some things. But when I was down in Virginia there, then I had the opportunity, my major professor got a grant from the National Science Foundation to go to Antarctica. And he took me along to go down there. So I went down twice. First time 2 months, and then the second time 4 months in Antarctica. Worked in the dry valleys, which are about 70 miles from McMurdo Station down there. And I kept a journal during the whole time. So that someday I'm going to print that up. But I think that's probably maybe where I got, my start in writing, because it was something unusual. And I thought, well, I have a very bad memory. So I thought, I better write all this down. So I think that was the start of my writing career, just down that way. But then, after the master's, I got a job with South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And I've been here in Pierce, South Dakota since 1976. And met my wife Liz here. We have 2 grown children, and our daughter Becky has 3 kids. So we've got 3 grandkids. And now I'm writing full time. And it's great. I love it. I mean, yeah, I'm hunkered down in the basement here, but it's fun to do.
Okay. Well, hey, your first book really was based on your journal of
It was,
your
yeah.
experience with Dances with Wolves.
Yeah. In fact, I had it up here. And, I threw it down. Good thing you can't see my whole mess in my office here, but here it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay, zoom in. What didn't they do something like this on Saturday Night Live or something like that years ago? I don't.
Wayne's World.
Yeah,
They came from the basement too.
Yeah. This is basement too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this book was I kept a journal during Dances with Wolves. And so the book is my experiences during Dances with Wolves, and called Dakota Epic. And by the way, I'll do the commercial. You can find any of my books at billmarkley.com. That's billmarkley.com.
All right.
And yeah, so I did that. And then I did a couple other books. I did one on, this is Lewis and Clark.
And Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live on the Missouri River here. So they came up the river in 1804 and then came back down in 1806. But this book here was pretty much based on their journals when they came up the river first few months to this area, where they took a loose bunch of characters, and by the time they got here, Clark was calling them his band of brothers. So it takes just a bunch of disparate characters and brings them together as a cohesive group. And then I did. I'll get through the whole thing.
There you go. Deadwood Dead Men. You bet.
Yeah, and yeah, I like that. If you can't see it down here, that's an actual picture of Deadwood down below there, 1876.
Right.
When the story takes place. As I said, it's a historical novel, but I like to say it's a novel for people that like history, because I went back and I reviewed the newspapers because I wanted to make sure who was in town at the time, what businesses were there, what was going on for 1 week of time in Deadwood, August 1876, just a week after Wild Bill was killed.
Oh, wow.
And so it's kind of a whodunit murder mystery, because there were several unsolved murders in Deadwood at the time. So I take them and turn it into a whodunit type deal. Maybe someday I'll come out with a sequel if I ever get done these other books. So I mentioned Kellen Cutsworth and I, we did this Old West Showdown. And what Kellen and I did with this is we took 10 controversial stories from the Old West, and he tells one side of the story, not to tell the other side. So for instance, something you're familiar with, the gunfight near behind, out beyond the OK Corral.
You mean on Fremont Street?
He tells the Earp side of the story, and I tell the Clanton side of the story. So that was fun to do. Calamity Jane, myth versus reality. Was she really lovers with, Wild Bill Hickock? And like I mentioned, the Johnson County War. The big ranchers against the little ranchers called the Outlaws. So we take all these stories. Custer he make a bonehead move at the Little Bighorn, or was Reno drunk and did Benteen disobey orders? I think based on that, you know which side I took. Anyway, that was a fun one to do. And by the way, we're doing a sequel to this called Showdown at High Noon, and that will be out in October of this year. And so in that one, we do things like, Davy Crockett, how did he die at the Alamo? Donner Party, were they really cannibals, or was it all other fun stories? Did Butch Cassidy and Sundance really die in Bolivia, or did they have fun on the French Riviera? So things like that. So then publisher Two Dot asked me to do a series of books comparing Old West characters. So the first one was Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp, lawmen of the legendary West. And so I take those two guys side by side, compare their lives side by side through time. And one of the fun things with them was that they were very good friends. So, so from time to time, they're apart, but then they're together and apart and together again. But a lot of fun things, a lot of little details in here people might not know about those guys. For instance, how much time do we have? I don't want to, take up all your time.
No, we're fine.
Okay, I'll tell one quick fun story on Bat Masterson. People may not know that the end of his life, he spent 20 some odd years in New York City. He loved sports. He was a sports reporter for a long time. He loved boxing and horse racing and all of that. And there was a guy that who had known him when he was a buffalo hunter years ago. And this guy was collecting Old West memorabilia back then. And he'd come into Bat's office every now and then and say, "Bat, I really want one of your pistols, from the Old West." And Bat finally got tired of this guy, and he went down to a pawn shop and he bought an old pistol. He came back in his office. He took out his pocket knife and he cut 21 notches on the pistol. Had it laying there. When the guy came in, he said, "Here, you can have this." And then this guy looks at it and goes, 21? And Bat goes, "Yeah." And so he took it away, and he wrote a book. And in the book, he said, "Oh yeah, I've got one of Bat's guns, and I know that he killed 21 men because there's 21 notches on the what is." Yeah, if you want to get it, it's called Hands Up.
Oh, okay.
And the author is right here. Yeah, Fred Sutton. Anyway, in this book, he goes, "Yeah, I know that he killed 21 men because there's 21 notches on his pistol." Anyway, yeah. So all you gun collectors, be aware. Buyer beware. So did that. Then came out this one. You got to go to the opposite side, right? Lawman. This is Outlaws of the Old West. This is Billy the Kid, Jesse James. A lot of fun putting that one together. I mean, as you know, you find little tidbits of things. They robbed this one bank, and they stole somebody's horse, and somebody actually took the James brothers to court trying to get his horse back. They hired a lawyer, and back and forth and back and forth. But it's like one of those obscure things that a lot of people probably don't know about. Finally, the James brothers said, "Forget it." They didn't want the horse back, and because they would have had to come into court and then stand trial for other things. So with that, then I'm currently working on a few other items. May I'll have the book out on Geronimo and Sitting Bull, and I want to publicly thank you, Doug, for all that you did to help me with that. Folks, if you don't know, Doug escorted me around Arizona into New Mexico, some pretty obscure places, to following the trail of Geronimo. And we got some places where it said, "Warning, beware." What was something about watch out for border crossers or something like that? It was It was kind
You
of
may
interesting.
encounter drug smugglers and other bad news
Yes, that's
sites
what it
in this
was.
area.
That's what it
Yeah.
was. So yeah, some pretty cool places we got to. And then Doug reviewed my book for me and pointed out some things that were not quite correct, and I went back and changed. So I want to thank you, Doug, very much for doing that. That was a very interesting book to put together, and it really showed, I think, comparing Geronimo and Sitting Bull and what the U.S. government did to those people. It shows you how out of control the government can be when it has absolute control over a person and you have no recourse, because those people had no recourse. There was nobody to go to. Whatever the government said, they had to do. And so I think it really brought home to me what we as an Americans, unfortunately now the Native Americans are considered Americans, but what we have as our precious rights through the Bill of Rights and those things that we need to safeguard, because absolute government is not a good thing. And you can read that when my book comes out, what absolute government does. And now another book that we're doing, I said the sequel to Old West Showdown, Showdown High Noon, that comes out in October. And I'm currently working on two bills, Wild and Buffalo. And those guys were both good friends. And so it's really fun to try to track those guys down and again try to weed out the myth from reality, and even the reality is encrusted with junk that needs to be stripped away, so that hopefully we can find hopefully I can find the real people and present it to you guys. So that's probably a longer answer than you wanted.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to ask you, of all your books, what was your favorite?
Wow. That's, they all are. No. And I could always say the one that I'm currently working on, because it's fun to find new and interesting tidbits. The historical novel I liked, The Deadwood Dead Men, because it was, in a way, it was liberating, because you didn't have to stick to the actual facts. For instance, if there were two versions to a story, you could choose the version that you wanted. Or if a fact wasn't there, like, let's say you have a brick wall and there's one brick missing.
Yeah.
Fabricate that brick and shove it into the wall. And that's what you can do with historical fiction. So that was fun to do. It was, like I said, it was liberating. But I would say of the current ones that are out now, I would say probably Billy the Kid and Jesse James. It was fun. It was hard, but it was fun to do. And I hope that I portray these guys in a lifelike way. Again, so much myth out there. It's ridiculous. But trying to get to the truth is fun to do.
Well, let's see. Clanton's, Billy the Kid, Jesse the James. Do you have an affinity for Outlaws?
You know what? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, of all the outlaws I've studied, I really like Butch Cassidy. I mean, to me, he stands out as a gentleman outlaw, an all-around nice guy, but he just had this quirk that he liked to get a little more money than the average guy, I guess. I don't know.
I just want you to know that Butch Cassidy blew up a train at Wilcox, Wyoming. We did it 4 years before at Wilcox, Arizona. He disappears into South and Central America. Our Bert Alvord did it before Butch.
Well, there was a lot of Butch Cassidy and Sundance sightings down there, and in different places. And I think there was a lot of people saying, yeah, that was Butch and Sundance, but I mean, if you're really Butch Cassidy or Sundance Kid, you're not going to promote where you are. When they were down in Patagonia, Argentina, they were, they had aliases and everything. They weren't going around saying who they were. And then when the Pinkertons found out who they were, then they started liquidating their assets and getting out of there. So yeah, very interesting. Yeah, no, I would say Butch. Yeah.
Butch, okay.
And what's really, this is crazy. I mean, like I said, when you're researching things, found out that Sundance Kid, Harry Lunenbaugh, probably butcher how you say that, actually grew up about 10 miles from where I grew up. And his mother's maiden name was the same as my grandfather's mother's maiden name. So I need to, when all this is over, I need to do a little genealogical research. I might, be a shirt-tailed cousin here or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Going to be the Sundance grandpa, right? Yeah. Well, I've been talking here with Bill Markley, and it's been fun. You can find Bill's books at markley.com.
No, come on. Bill Markley. It's easy. BillMarkley.com.
Okay.
That's BillMarkley.com.
You can also find links from the Tucson Festival of Books on the exhibitors page, Amigos and Ladies of the West, or Amigos and Ladies of the West on Facebook. And
you can order at your local brick and mortar bookstore too. They can
yes,
they can bring it in for us. So I like to promote local bookstores. Keep them alive.
Little enough of them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bill,
we should say we didn't say this either. We're both members of Western Writers of America.
Yes, we are
amigos.
Okay, well, take care, Bill.
All right, thanks, Doug. See ya. Adios.